Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of What's on Your Mind by Unbiased Food. So basically, if some of you guys don't know what this is about, it's all about we talk about a specific topic of the day, and today's topic is it's going to gear towards mental health. My other co-hosts aren't here, Solomon and Money. They're all busy doing other things, but I got my own special guest here, and I'll let him introduce himself.
So Tu Kang, that's my name. I am, so I work as a clinical neuropsychologist, where basically I do evaluations on people who have different types of mental health and medically related complications.
All right, and then let's go more into like the psychology and psychiatry psychiatrist deal because not a lot of people know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Where let's let you explain that a little bit.
Psychologists and psychiatrists. A lot of people mix it up. So psychologists, um, they have a doctorate in psychology. A lot of times, clinical psychology or school psychology, educational psychology. Psychiatrists, they actually are the ones who go to medical school. So they have a medical degree and then they specialize in psychiatry. And so they are the ones. Um, most of the time now they do medication management. They don't do as much psychotherapy as they used to back in the day. So that's basically the biggest difference is medical school with medication certification, and then psychologists, licensed psychologists are those who have doctorates in psychology.
All right, yeah, that's I get that mix up all the time, but I'm pretty sure not a lot of people know the difference. But hopefully, after watching this video, people know what the difference is. But as always, like from Unbiased Foods, I'm gonna have you try out two dishes here, and then you can pick whichever one you like better at the end of the trial. All right, so
All
go
right.
ahead, pick. As always, pick your blindfold. Do you want the dog, the cat?
Ooh, yeah, get the dog.
Take the dog. All right, I'll grab this away. All right, so this dish that we're trying out today right now, it's gonna be noodles. All right, I actually had a request from somebody to try out some noodles to find out which is the best instant noodle or packaged noodle. So I'll give it to my buddy here. Try out. So this would be dish A, which would be the yellow dish. All right, so it's right in front of you. I'll give you your utensils too. All right, so on your right is your soup spoon. On your left is a fork.
Okay, okay.
All right.
I'm gonna taste the broth.
All right. Let me know what you like about it, what you don't like about it, or if you have any opinions.
It's actually kind of hard to eat with this thing on, man.
Yeah, that's the whole point, man. Try to struggle with it on.
I definitely feel like I've had this brand before. Hmm.
I can say I never had that brand before.
Maybe they just all taste so similar. This is good. I mean, it tastes like your typical instant ramen. Um, it's kind of on the salty side, but I guess that's how a lot of the
The instant
instant
ramen
ramen
is,
is.
yeah, on the salty
Yeah, I
side.
mean it's
Yeah.
good. It's good. I mean, it's something that on a day where you don't want to cook when it's cold out.
All right. Let me know when you're ready for the second one.
I would give this on a scale of 1 to 10. On a ramen scale, instant, I would say maybe like a 7.
A 7.
7.
All right. Okay. And then here, hold up. Here's the bottled water if you want to take a
Oh yeah.
cleanse your palates here.
Let's cleanse the palate.
All right. So that was dish A.
Okay.
And then dish B, I'll put right in front of you, right here. And just to remind everybody, the whole purpose of the blindfold is so you won't have an biased view on how the food is prepared or looks.
Okay.
All right.
Is this something broth?
Yeah, it's broth. Both of them has broth.
Ooh, this one's tastes kind of interesting. It's got some like sesame flavor in there.
And these both are tonkatsu, all right? So they're tonkatsu flavored. Just FYI, I don't know if you noticed the difference.
Oh yeah, this one's definitely lighter. I actually kind of like this one more.
You like that one more?
Yeah, because it's a little bit, it's less in your face with the salt. It's a little bit lighter, and it reminds me more of what you of the flavor profile you get, like if you go to a shop or something.
All right, you can go ahead and take off your blindfold. And then, so obviously, you like Dish B better. So Dish B is actually from, it's the brand name Ichiban, Ichiban's tonkatsu instant noodle ramen. And this one is actually Ichiran's tonkatsu ramen, which is this was actually a little bit expensive. It was so I bought a pack, $30. It only came in a pack of five.
$30 for a
Yeah,
pack of 5?
$30 for a pack of five.
Holy.
This one was about $8 for a pack of five.
Dang,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
expensive.
But supposedly this one's like all over Japan. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Is
they
that the
have,
one that Japanese people eat? Like the instant noodles that they like
uh,
over there?
I'm not sure, but I know they have like restaurants itself all over
Yeah,
Japan.
like that style.
Yeah. Oh no, this brand.
This
This
brand,
brand.
oh.
Yeah.
Let me taste that again.
You want to taste it again? But
$30 for a pack of 5?
yep, $30 for a pack of five.
I mean, it's good. It's good. It's just really on the salty side. If you like salty food,
Well, how about the noodles? Like,
the noodles are good. I think it just depends on how long how long you boil it. Because some people like
oh, like a crunchy.
chewy, like a chewy texture, like a firm noodle.
Uh-huh.
I like the firmer noodles more.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually like the softer noodles.
Yeah.
So I like it cooked a little more, but it's all about preference.
That's good.
Yeah. But anyway, so we'll move these aside and see if you want to cleanse your palate, take a drink of water before we talk about our topic is.
Let's talk.
All right. So today's topic. So let's go into about ADHD or attention deficit disorder.
Yep.
Right? There you go. I kind of murdered it, but he's a professional.
Yeah.
He can let us know about it.
So my work and my experience is more with kids, really, and so I work a lot with what we call neurodevelopmental disorders, and so that's just a fancy way of saying brain-based disorders. And so one of those is ADHD. A lot of people call it ADD. That's just what it's been called over the years, but they just changed it to ADHD now. And ADHD. The diagnosis itself, there's either ADHD inattentive or ADHD hyperactive impulsive or ADHD combined, which is both inattentive and hyperactive impulsive together. So that's the reason why we don't call it ADD anymore, but we still have families who come in, they call it that, and that's totally fine. But just to be technical with it, it's ADHD, one of the 3 types.
So what's the difference between so let's say the first two?
So basically, there are kids who are more who are able to self-regulate and they can sit still and they're not really hyper or they're not super impulsive, but they just have a hard time sustaining their attention. So that's a kid who might have ADHD, the inattentive type. So the types are basically describing the behaviors, basically. So you can either be really inattentive, you can be either really hyperactive or impulsive, or you can be combined of those two.
Both.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then so like let's say if I had like a kid who I wasn't sure who might have it, who might not have it, like what are like, some signs to look out for?
So a lot of these kids who have ADHD, they're actually, you can spot them usually when they're young. They tend to be a little bit more active. You put them next to a bunch of kids, and they might be that kid who is just harder to keep in place. They tend to have a hard time basically just regulating their behaviors. And again, this is easily seen when they're in preschool, for example. There'll be that kid who's probably getting in trouble more often. Those are just basically the early signs. The thing about these diagnoses is it's not like other medical diagnoses where you can do a blood test or you test genes or anything like that. It's based on your observations of their behaviors. So basically, that's all it is. You have to observe them, and then when they come see me, there's a lot of questions I ask the parents. Um, then I do my own testing of their attention with some of my tools, and then make a final decision on whether or not they have the diagnosis.
One of the three.
One of the three.
One of the three.
Yeah, one of the three, or combined, or what have you. And then we just kind of take it from there when it comes to things like treatment. Um, Everybody knows that there's Adderall and there's Ritalin and there's these different stimulant medications. There's non-stimulant medications. And different psychologists some psychologists are really are very
For it.
for it. Some are, I wouldn't say against it, but more conservative. So sometimes it can depend on which provider you see. But really, I mean, it should be the provider assessing how much impact the ADHD symptoms are having. And then based on that information, they say, maybe it's a good idea. Yeah, maybe it's a good idea to talk to your doctor, your primary care doctor, about getting some medication for your kid. But I tend to be a little bit conservative, especially if the symptoms aren't extremely impactful to them. I always like to start with environmental things, because there's a lot of parenting strategies, environmental things that can help a kid who has ADHD be more successful. So that's like a lot of the conversations I have with parents too.
I know this is gonna kind of go out off from your profession, but it's like, so what do you think about adult ADHD?
Adult ADHD, that's a good question, because that's very hard. Even for me as a clinician, it's really hard to assess, because as adults, we have so many things going on in our lives, and there's a lot of things that can impact your attention. If you're depressed, your attention span goes down. If you're anxious, your attention span goes down. So there's just, as adults, there's just so many other factors that could be causing your attention span to be bad, to be poor. So really, it's just making sure that they don't have these other factors, and being comfortable diagnosing it. Um, because at the end of the day, you kind of have to make a decision. And really, a lot of times these adult ADHD cases don't even come to the psychologist, because they just go directly to their primary care doctor, and they can diagnose it also. But they do questionnaires, and then they can do the diagnosis, and that's why I don't personally see a lot of adults who come in and they have complaint about, do I have ADHD?
Because they're more seeing their primary care.
Yeah, because usually they go see the primary care doctors, and their PCPs are the ones who prescribe the medication anyway. So sometimes it's more efficient to do it that way. But it's a hard topic, because again, you can't just do a blood draw. You can't just do genetic testing or anything like that to rule in or rule out ADHD. So it comes down to clinical judgment, and people can have different clinical judgments for adult ADHD. So yeah, that's a tough issue. But there are adults who say, oh, I think I have ADHD. And there's really legit cases, and then there's cases where I'm not so sure about that, sir or ma'am, because if you have really good skills at adapting to your environment, you can compensate for your ADHD
or your attention span.
Yeah, you can do things to compensate, and sometimes when you get to adulthood, maybe you have more life demands, and you start realizing you can't compensate, and so this ADHD that's been there with your whole life suddenly starts to impact how you function. So
do you believe that, like, sometimes some people are misdiagnosed, like they aren't, I mean, they were never, they had it, but they were never diagnosed to have it?
I mean, misdiagnosis, I mean, just like any other, there's sometimes mistakes happen, sometimes people get diagnosed. And that's why, I mean, I've gotten referrals, they come and they talk about, I want to make sure I have this X diagnosis. Can you help to clarify this diagnosis to make sure it's the right one? So, sometimes people get misdiagnosed and sometimes, yeah, so, it happens.
Yeah. All right, and then all right, so let's kind of shift over. I want to go into like autism for kids because like it to me it seems like it's more prevalent now. I've seen it more.
Hmm.
Like one of my friends might have his kid might have autism, but I don't know
Hmm.
if he's gotten tested. So like, what's your intake on that? Or let's explain what autism is because some people might not know
Yeah,
what
autism
autism
is
is.
huge now. I mean, just there's so much coverage on it in the media now. Even in the professional world, there's such a huge um, emphasis on it now. Especially in Minnesota, we have a lot of autism resources here that outnumber a lot of most other states.
Oh
Um,
wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean, and it's so big now, and even to get a specialist, I'm not a, I can diagnose autism for those who are more clearly, um,
Autistic.
yeah, for the kids who have autism. But sometimes I'll come across one that I'm not 100% sure, and so I'll refer them. And autism is so prevalent, and it's that you have to, the wait time is like a year to get to be seen by an autism specialist who will do specific autism measures, um, that's direct testing. But that's just some context about how big it is right now. Um, and the discussion about why is it so big, that's a whole, I mean, we can go on for hours about, why the rates are up, what's driving that. But, to come back to autism, I mean, it's basically, it's again falls in the neurodevelopmental disorder. Um, autism. Some of the core features is basically they have a social deficit, so they don't have good social skills.
Mhm.
They struggle to have back and forth conversations. They struggle to take your perspective. Like they don't know. They just tend to have a hard time um, being in someone else's shoes. And then the other component is they have these what we call restrictive or repetitive behaviors, sometimes odd body movements, mannerisms. Um, when we talk about restricted behaviors, we think about, getting stuck on things like certain, like a interest. Like for example, a kid may be extremely obsessed with one particular toy for a few months and then switch to something else. So those are some examples. I mean, these kids, they have one thing I hear all the time is they have a very hard time transitioning from one activity to the next. So they're doing one thing, and you say, oh, okay, it's time to do this, and then they just have a complete meltdown, trying to go from one activity to the next activity. And again, autism is there's just so many little things that go into autism that we can talk about, but those are kind of the two core components that we look for when we're trying to diagnose autism. Um,
What I was gonna say is that so what I read about is that, or someone posted it online. This is just Facebook news, but
yeah.
you should always believe Facebook news. But some guy was saying that yeah, his kid has autism, and he kept flicking his fingers back and forth.
Hmm.
Is that? Do you think that's? I don't know if you would know if that's
I mean, I
true.
wouldn't die. Obviously, of course, I wouldn't diagnose it off of that,
Yeah.
but we you do there. It's very common for these kids with autism to do repetitive things with their
Yeah.
hands, um, and it's stimulating for them. We call these stimulating behaviors, and it stimulates them. And so they do this. Sometimes they'll kind of flap their hands around like this, not just when they're excited, but just out of the blue. Just randomly flap their hands, or other types of, they'll rock their body, or just unusual body movements. So yeah, I mean that's part of it. So there's just it's not something that that I usually tell parents, look for these things, because it can be so hard to really, if you're not trained in it, it can be hard to really spot these deficits just by casually observing someone. But if you have training in it, then you can watch a kid, and you can say, okay, I see these
These
things.
are signs of
Yeah, these
like
are
this kid
signs of,
might have
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't recommend. I'm not sure I would recommend, you go look for all these things, parents, and see, But if there are social concerns or other types of just unusual, these kids are oftentimes just described as unusual and odd. Um, and go see a specialist if you have concerns, really.
All right. So let's wrap it up. So as always, if you have concerns about your kid's mental health, get them tested. That's the best way to have them diagnosed. You heard it from my buddy. He's a professional. That's what he does for his career. But until next time, thanks everybody for tuning in. Watch us on the next episode. Thanks.